Hello, everyone. This is Raphael.
And I'm Loryn.
We're the Pacheco siblings, and welcome to the Hypercube podcast, a talk show in which two siblings converse about anything and everything. So you know what I found out recently?
All right, what'd you find out recently?
So Clint Eastwood. I don't remember why we were talking about Clint Eastwood a few seconds ago, but we were talking about Clint Eastwood. You needed
I needed a name, and Clint Eastwood was one you gave me.
Well, you were talking about Westerns, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
Clint Eastwood. So I recently found out, and I had to double check this before we started recording.
Yeah.
Did you know that as a director, Clint Eastwood shoots almost exclusively a single take?
Wait. So
he doesn't like doing more than one take.
So he just shoots the film and then it's done?
Yeah, and then it's just done.
Okay. That's a way to shoot a film.
It is a way to shoot a film. I had no idea, though. I mean, he shot some films with some pretty incredible performances. But like he is very minimalistic about it. And I was checking to see if it was like always one take. That was what I read at first. From what I can tell, that is a little bit exaggerated, but he does have a preference for as few takes as possible.
Yeah.
And almost always does either one or two.
Right.
Which is crazy because you think of that as being like a very television thing to do, right? Where television has a lot of really bad time constraints that pretty much necessitate you to get every shot in one or two takes. But that being the case, like he makes feature films and they don't really like feel like television. I don't think generally they do feel like features still, but yeah, most of the shots are like just one or two takes. And it's kind of crazy.
I mean, I can see why though. It's just a very extreme version of just like getting your actor's initial instinct on a scene. But
yeah, well, from what I can tell, that's kind of his MO. Or his motivation, I should say.
Yeah.
That like he wants to get that organic spontaneity. Like his goal, his stated objective is to make it sound lifelike in that way, right? Where in life you kind of only always get the first take. And so it's like he wants to make it sound organic, like it was something that they just said. And he's found the best way to do that is to just get them just saying it, and not make it sound very, very red. And of course, that works great with experienced performers.
Yeah.
Which he does work with a lot of experienced performers. But yeah, like with experienced performers who know what they're doing and who know his instincts that he's worked with a lot and know what he wants, but also have just very good instincts in and of themselves, it tends to work really well with them. And I think that's why, you get a film like $1 Million Baby, say, you have a lot of great actors in that one, and you got Morgan Freeman doing his thing. I mean, the first time Morgan Freeman says anything, it's going to sound golden, but it works out really well. But apparently, obviously when he works with like newer actors on sets, it can show a little bit more. And I think you could tell that with some of the films, but for the most part, it is, I mean, that's pretty respectable when you consider the number of auteurs that are notorious for shooting like hundreds of takes.
He's on the opposite end of that spectrum.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about,
he just doesn't give a dang.
I was thinking about like Gran Turismo, where like there's a bunch of like really young actors in it.
Yeah. Or Gran Torino? That one?
Gran T. Turismo? Was it Torino?
Turismo was that racing movie.
Oh, that is true. That is true. Yeah. Gran Turismo. Gran Torino.
Which apparently was directed by Neil Blomkamp.
I'm excited to see some crazy VFX in that film.
I thought you watched that film.
Wait, was that the racing film with the gamers?
Yeah.
Oh, there was some crazy VFX in that film.
Oh, really? For shizzles?
Yeah. There's a ton of racing movies that came out in like the last like 5 years for some reason.
I have no idea. Yeah, people became really obsessed with racing. Like Hollywood got really obsessed with racing and cars for like the past couple of years.
Yeah.
And I don't know what triggered it.
No idea why. Like, and it's not even like
happening.
It's not even like NASCAR, because like there is the one NASCAR movie, which is the which was a Ferrari versus
Ford v Ferrari. Well, and there was another one, that's coming out with Brad Pitt that's like proper NASCAR stuff. But yeah, like it's just all kinds of racing stuff.
Yeah, it's just like it's like all kinds of racing stuff. Like there's just a ton of racing, like just car things. People like cars for all of a sudden now. But yeah, no, that was a pretty good movie. I'd rate it a solid like 7 out of 10.
I mean, Neil Blomkamp is a solid director. Well, oftentimes he can be hit or miss, but that's I think because he pumps out such a large volume of content too. He is a very prolific director, but he knows his process and is very, very good with VFX.
Yeah, there's definitely some, like, obviously it's a pretty like grounded film.
Yeah, that has to be the most grounded film I've ever seen him do.
Yeah, but there's definitely a lot of scenes where he ramps up his like style on like the subjective kind of experiences of like for people. Like there's because obviously like the main character is like a racing sim driver who becomes a real race car driver, which is totally like I looked it up afterwards. Pretty accurate on how everything happened, which is ridiculous. Like I remember watching that movie going like, there was no way that happened. They made that up for this movie. Nope, actually happened in real life. Crazy, but like yeah, a lot of stuff where it's like he would, he's like driving real cars, and then like it turns into a video game, and and that's how he sees the world and everything. So it's like that kind of subjective stuff was really well done with his high VFX vision. Yeah.
Yeah. So you'd recommend it?
I would, especially if you're on a plane.
Yeah. Although that was also one of those films. There's been a huge trend of this in Hollywood, and apparently has been going for a long time, of one of those films that denies its VFX, where it's just like, there are no VFX in this movie. And it's like, it's a freaking Neil Blomkamp movie. Yeah. Which is again, a lot of films in general use that as part of their marketing of being like, there are zero VFX in this film. It's all done practically. That was a huge part of Top Gun Maverick's marketing campaign, was being like, it's all practical, which, but
that's freaking Tom Cruise though.
But it's also not true in that film.
Yeah.
It is not true that it is 100% practical.
No.
And
I would believe that it's like, 80-90% practical, like because Tom Cruise does fly
crazy stuff. He does, yeah.
He's just a crazy person, but there's like
almost every time that's said, you could guarantee that it's a lie.
Well, here's the thing: I'll only believe that if somebody says there's no VFX in my movie, like there's zero visual effects, special visual effects in my film. I'll only believe that if it's some person like on the street shooting with a camcorder. That's when I'll believe it. Because if you're shooting through a studio, the studio is going to have you do VFX. Hey, can you take out that mole? VFX. Hey, can you just warp that reflection in the window a little bit because there's some really weird stuff going on in that window? VFX.
Yeah, can you paint out that boom?
Yeah, VFX. Mm-hmm. Can you get rid of this actor's mustache? He didn't want to shave it for this film. VFX.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, it is worth being skeptical of anybody saying that on a studio film. Just throwing that out there. Just don't believe them. It's almost guaranteed to be a lie.
What they mean to say is, we try to do everything practical within our constraints.
Yeah,
that's pretty
much it. But there's just such this weird... Well, there's a long history about why this is the case, but yeah, there is this stigma and this shame in the industry around using visual effects. And
it's just because the normal audience member doesn't know what it is.
Yeah, it's a very silly stigma, but it's the marketing always plays.
You know what it is?
Stigma.
You know what it is? VFX is the new what's that term? Whistleblow? No, not whistleblow. Dog whistle.
Dog whistle.
It's the same thing as autotune in the music industry. People who don't understand what autotune is will say it's too much autotune in that song, meaning it's a bad song, even though there's autotune in literally every single song. Like if there's a song that you listen to and it's on the radio or it's by a popular artist, it's autotuned. Even if it doesn't use like the program called autotune, it has been pitch adjusted. Guarantee you.
At least once.
At least once. Yeah, your actor, the vocalist will be in the booth going like da 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 da, and you're like, can you bump that up like 0.001, whatever you call them? And it's just like, yeah, like, yeah, they were just ever so slightly off. And I have perfect pitch, so I can tell that it's annoying me.
Yeah. I think that is a fair comparison. But yeah, it's really a shame because VFX artists get a very bad rap in the industry.
Yeah.
And even though they are very necessary to the whole lifeblood of it.
Stupid necessary.
Work on so many films, even films that you wouldn't think that they are in. But you look at the credits and it's like, there they are. More VFX artists. But yeah,
that's just a whole like minute of the credits is dedicated to the VFX artist.
Yeah. It's really, it's a really silly little cultural issue. Yeah. But we talk a lot about cultural issues that exist in the industry, and it's a problem. There are a lot of great videos.
It is straight up ignorance.
Oh yeah, straight up ignorance. But there are a lot of great videos addressing this kind of stuff. Apparently there's a series of video essays that I haven't watched because they're very long, but that a lot of people have been referencing called No CGI is Really Just Invisible CGI. It's a multi-part like video essay series that's very, very long. I haven't looked at it, but I've heard it's a really great deep dive into, basically every instance of film that has been marketed as utterly no CGI in this film. And just breaking down how much CGI there is in the film and where and how it's used.
I think I have seen which videos you're referencing, and if I remember correctly, one of the like the big examples, because I don't know if I like listened to it or if I like briefly previewed it, but like one of the big examples is like there's this one film that's supposed to have no CGI in it that was shot on like pretty minimal, I think, budget type of, like I think it was an indie film, and one of the shots where it's like, hey, look, this is just an establishing shot of the city. No CGI, right? Here's the before and after. And like the entire city was digitally altered to look like the thing that you see in the film. It's like there's buildings that have been adjusted. Parts of the traffic was made to be more dense. And it's like, yeah, that's CGI. But just watching it, it's like a 5-second long establishing shot. And then they go back down to the street level and it's like, oh, it's all handheld in indie. Definitely no CGI here. I mean, you couldn't do CGI on handheld anyways, which is of course wrong. But that's the idea, right? Because like you put it in handheld to show off how good your CGI is to people who know CGI, and that you can say to normal people, there's no CGI in this shot.
I mean, motion tracking has been a thing for a long time. There's a great little mini doc called Life After Pi that kind of delves into those issues as well, of the VFX studio that won an Oscar for doing the Life of Pi film.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about this.
Yeah, they did the VFX for that. Yeah, and they shut down sometime later. And yeah, it is just crazy because when they won that Oscar, like they literally, it was just incredibly disrespectful the way the whole affair went down, and they were literally cut off from finishing their speech and stuff. Yeah, it was kind of ridiculous, and they didn't take nearly as long on their speech as, people in certain other categories.
Right.
And so it's just crazy how little respect VFX kind of gets in the industry oftentimes, and how greatly studios are often ashamed of it despite their prolific use of them. It's definitely
purely
not helpful.
It's purely an optical, like,
it's just optics. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely not helpful to workers, though, and the people who actually have to slave away at this stuff and who have to justify their presence basically on any job. I mean, at least at the executive level. Directors know why they need them.
Oh yeah, anybody who actually works in the industry, in post especially, knows how important a VFX artist is. It would be really interesting for a legitimate no VFX, at least probably, like you couldn't get away with it in a studio film, because like as much as the studios are embarrassed to hire VFX artists, they will hire every VFX artist.
Right.
But like a pretty high level indie film, maybe A24, to see just to show what an actual no VFX film would be. And like because it'd be interesting if you like, I'm going to make this prediction if it ever happens. Maybe I'll do it whenever we get to that position, but I'm willing to bet the budget will be so bloated and it will look much more minimal than a movie of that budget should look. Like it'll look like a $1 million budget film, but it'll be like $100 million budget.
I mean, to be fair, there are definitely a lot of films that are being made with zero CGI. They're just not genre films, I think, generally. I think there are a lot of dramas that are definitely being made
that's
zero CGI, but like,
when
genre films for sure.
Yeah.
Basically, an overwhelming majority, if not all, especially all in the studio system, have some degree of CGI within them.
Like, that's true, because depending on, of course, the style of the film, more certain genres lean into less CGI just because of the nature of their narrative. But I was, like in my head, I was thinking something like a horror film.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, that's an interesting sort of rabbit hole. I feel like oftentimes there's a kind of kinship between VFX and stunts for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where stunts, I mean, they may not have as much of a stigma against them, but they very much do not have a lot of industry recognition either.
Yeah.
Like they are.
It's only because they have even less industry recognition.
Yeah, that is the reason why there's no stigma against them, is because they're too small of a pip on the executive radar to even register.
People don't even know what stunt actors do.
Yeah, or I should say, there's very much this kind of assumption that what they do is, I don't know, not really artistic, I guess, is the kind way to put it. Like, you don't need an Oscar category.
Yeah, well, like, what are you even doing?
Yeah, you've got a technical job on set.
Yeah.
But what are we going to do? No amount of Charlie Chaplin or Buster Keaton can convince Hollywood that stunts are an artful profession.
Basically, what we need is like I guess somebody other than Tom Cruise or maybe Chris Hemsworth. I mean, like Jackie Chan was probably the closest we got to a stunt person being a list actor. We need somebody who's like, we need a triple threat who is an actor, a stunt person, and and something else,
and a singer.
Yeah,
which I guess is just Jackie Chan. But I mean, if anyone was going to do it, true. It would have been him. And it's just ridiculous to me that Jackie Chan, just because of the way the industry is designed, Jackie Chan never won an Oscar. They had to honorary Oscar him at the, now that he's getting into his old age, he did get an honorary Oscar. But it seems like honorary Oscars are the only way that they recognize people that the industry designed to never get recognition. You know, it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm glad that like he still got something. But again, it's like a lifetime of incredible work, you know, just to get like one award saying we couldn't give you any other awards, you know,
hope this made up for it.
Yeah, hope this made up for it. Well, same thing is happening now. David Lynch is having a lot of health issues that, you know, it's looking kind of likely he might not, you know, direct any more films. David Lynch also never won an Oscar. I think they also gave him an honorary one. Yeah. But it's like, when you look at, it's interesting listening to directors talk and realizing how huge of an influence he had, though, right? Because so many writers and directors reference his work, if you ever listen to them in interviews. And it happens with such regularity that you realize, like, man, he, despite the fact that, you know, he was in many ways not really like a household name for a lot of audiences, he still was like a highly, highly influential figure in the industry.
Yeah. Well, he's one of those, he's your favorite director's favorite director kind of person.
Yeah, for sure. Which is always a great place I've learned to learn, is to, I mean, and this is hardly novel advice. This has been said a lot, but yeah, just like watch the films that influenced the filmmakers you like is always a great advice, right? Because when you get back to, like, you go back far enough into older films, and I'm like hardly one of those curmudgeonly people that will say only older films are of merit, but there is a value to that because you are seeing the very basic foundations of screen craft in those older films, where they had so few options that you really just see the pure theory and craft at work by necessity in those older films.
What's the phrase? There's nothing new under the sun, right? I think for some people, they don't really understand what it means when nothing new can be made, right? Like they think, oh, so what's the point? Then my contributions don't mean anything because like then I can't create anything new. It's like, no, you have to realize that everything that you will ever create, everything that the people that you like will ever create, have ever created, is based entirely off of their lived experience. Like if they didn't follow and study and learn from these greats who followed, learned, and studied from other greats who followed, learned, and studied from other greats, you're going all the way down the line to cave paintings. Then like all you're doing is mixing and matching your references. You're just mixing and matching your inspirations. When somebody says there's nothing new under the sun, like nothing new can be created, it's because we're all remixing. We're all just taking what we learned and adding them, like smushing them all together in a way that makes sense to us.
Yeah. Well, and again, we talk often about the illusion of originality and how much it isn't really the thing that exists, or at least it's a very overrated thing because nobody exists in a vacuum, right? A lot of people will try to say, like, claim originality despite their influences, right? And everybody has been influenced. If you exist in the world, you have been influenced, you know?
And the thing is, like, even if you are like let's say just through some miracle, you're 30 years old, zero, like actually grew up in a vacuum, bubble boy, actually have literally no influence on like artistic or anything like that. You barely understand language, and then you drew a stick man. You're not the first person to draw a stick man.
This is very true. I mean, that's quite an extreme illustration, but yeah.
Like whatever you create is going to be a combination of the influences that made you like to create. And then if you, by some miracle, created something entirely original that you're just like, this has never been done before. As far as I can tell, this is the first time this has ever been done. You would be wrong, because there have been billions of years of human evolution of just monkeys typing at it, like banging away at a typewriter. And at some point, we got really good at banging away at a typewriter till we started banging away at a typewriter to only the things that made sense. Somebody somewhere already had that idea and probably turned it into a thing. You just don't know about it. So originality, even if you actually created something in your mind of whole cloth, someone's already beating you to it. It's just a numbers game.
But that's
embrace that.
Yeah. Originality is definitely overrated. Like it is an impossible pursuit that forces you into arbitrary decisions. And it's
especially when you get into the over designing side of it, where people are trying to be too original, and then they try really, really hard to not be like anything else. So what they end up being is bad.
Yeah, for sure. The people who end up creating the best art are the ones who are most cognizant of their influences and can name them, right?
Yeah.
And it's basically what makes your art unique is your point of view and what amalgam of influences you choose to mix, right? Because everyone is a unique amalgam of different experiences, and those experiences have a lot of overlap with other people's experiences. But nobody probably has the exact combination that you do, oftentimes. And it's your exact combination is where originality, like perceived originality, can come out of. And but it only happens in the exact embrace of influence rather than the attempt to be freed from it.
My favorite, one of my favorite Matt Coble quotes is, "You're only as good as the obscurity of your references."
Or only as original.
Or no, that was you're only as original as the obscurity of your references. Because I am not even like ashamed to say, like, the best way to learn how to create is to plagiarize. Straight up steal people's stuff. Right? Imitation is the greatest flattery. You learn to be good by just reproducing good things. You like that? Reproduce it. Figure out the steps that it takes to make that thing. And if that thing is, if you already know that thing is good and you can create it, then you can reverse engineer how to make good things. The thing is, that doesn't stop once you become successful. You continue to just steal the people's stuff. You're just a little bit more sly about it.
And you have a little bit more of a process. It's just like you understand which parts you like to take, which parts you don't.
Yeah, because you can break it apart further.
Exactly. And you understand which parts you are better at implementing, which ones you fail at implementing, and things like that, right? And that refines your process. And process, at the end of the day, is really kind of everything. I think the more I learn, the more I realize that is process is hugely important. But it's also very interesting thinking about those influences. Like I remember a while back, I looked back on some of my earlier machinimas. I think like last year or something. It was sometime in recent memory. And it's very interesting to see them, right? Because I kind of, to kind of give a little bit of background for those who don't know, I kind of started out, I think, in machinimas in a lot of ways. I've been writing for as long as I can remember. That's always been something that's just been a part of me. But when it comes to filmmaking, I think my earliest foray into filmmaking were machinimas in like the early 2010s, which is crazy. That's over 10 years ago. And
that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Actually ridiculous.
So, actually ridiculous. I was a literal child. Well, I guess
and straight up teenagers weren't born then.
Yeah, I guess I would have been a teen, but it's interesting looking at those now that I've had to have a much larger body of work, because you could kind of see the beginnings of my taste and style in those. You know what I mean? I look at them, I'm like, ooh, this is really crude. It's not very well done or not very well made. But there are things I like about this. And you could kind of pinpoint, right? Like what it is that attracts me to storytelling, right? What things I was already showing affinity for, what things I was already liking doing, what things I actually did fairly well. And even though it's largely hot garbage, as they say in the industry, it's
that's a professional term.
Yeah, professional term. Like there's still something there where I could look at that and be like, there's still elements of that style.
There's a glimmer
in my work today. Yeah. And it's like, that is the part of it that is you, right? That is the part of you that will be there, like no matter what you're creating. And it's interesting to see that though, in such a crude form where it's really clear to tell, right? Where you could kind of see a little bit clearly. It's like, okay, where your personal strengths came in. I'm still working on how to define what that is for me, because it's really kind of ephemeral in a lot of ways. And perhaps I'm not the best one to define it, but like I look at it and it was like, man, because even in those older ones, like I was really, I don't know how to put it. Like I had like a taste for moments, right? Like I knew how to create like big moments, I should say, like big, over the top, but very cinematic, like epic moments. Even though a majority of it is hot garbage, right? There would always be those moments where it was just like, oh, dang, that was just rule of cool,
Yeah, and a lot of like the stuff that we were making at the beginning were simply like if when we were making short films or anything like that, I think a lot of what we did was we created moments and then everything else around it were just and then all the story, the plot were just vehicles to making those moments happen. Those moments happen.
Very much so. I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's a better way to describe it. Is I think that's very much how my older machinimas kind of were. My first ones, they were very much like moments that an entire narrative was built around. And come to think of it, that's kind of how you describe Zack Snyder's style. So I might have had something in common with them there. But I think I've at least learned more about writing.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, it works.
Yes.
Especially when it comes to,
I think that is
the cinematic,
why people like Zack Snyder, like genuinely, unironically too, right? A lot of people just love his style. I think for that reason, because they love the moments.
That's the thing. Like the moments are sick. And if you have a 4-hour film, there's like 15 moments in that. There's a ton of moments. So like that's more moments than most other films. That's a good film by some people's standards, right?
Right.
So
because you had a bunch of moments in it.
That's more moments than other films. Can you say that about anything else? It works so well because that's what people remember. People remember those, like if you look at like the experience of watching a film as like a graph of like high intensity and low intensity, you don't remember anything in the middle. You remember the highs and the lows. Everything in the middle is just kind of like, you just have to slog to get to the good stuff. And then something good happens or something bad happens. And that's what you remember. You remember, that scene didn't work, or that scene really worked. That scene really, really, really worked. And then that's what you come away from the theater talking about. It's like, dude, do you remember that time when instead of, I really liked the dialogue between the butler and the rich guy when they were just talking about what they ate for breakfast today.
I mean, in all reality, Zack Snyder, I think probably did have an influence on my style, probably subconsciously, even though I don't really think about him that much nowadays. Because I mean, and you know, of course, we have a lot of issues with Zack Snyder as a storyteller, but I think as an artist, he definitely has a voice, and for that, like, for sure, huge respect, right? Like, unlike a lot of blockbuster directors, like that, when you're watching a Zack Snyder joint, that he has a recognizable artistic style, and it's consistent, right? It's consistently a Zack Snyder joint when you're. When you're
it's just slow motion.
His films, it's a lot of slow motion, but it's very, very pretty, well composed, colorful slow motion, right?
Yes,
it is
still like what is it?
Oftentimes well choreographed, well posed,
yes,
well choreographed.
Well, that's
well composed.
That's a thing.
Prettiness.
I think
pure prettiness.
I think the reason Zack Snyder works so well is because his style of filmmaking is really conducive to turning comic books and graphic novels into motion, because I feel like that is just how that is the cinematic language that he uses. Well, yeah, because like, I mean,
he sees the world.
He's done it a lot. Because like, was it? He did 300, right?
Yes.
And 300, I think originally was a graphic novel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's like his style, or maybe he developed this style to translate graphic novel into cinema, where it is like these moments, these panels that he zooms in on and slows down so that you can appreciate the composition of that one moment, that one panel, right? That 2-page spread, maybe, where it's like, this is like, you stare at it. All the characters are in positions where you can tell that action is happening. And he just focuses in on all those moments.
Yeah, for sure. I think that really is the strength of his style. I think you kind of hit on the head there. It really has that same appeal.
I'm not sure which came first.
Like a great comic book panel.
Yeah, because like I'm thinking of a lot of these scenes from the Snyder Cut, where it's literally just like, it's slowed down so ridiculously slow, where I'm just like, it's literally a comic book panel. I'm watching a comic book panel. Like,
with
if somebody just took
the motion.
Yeah, so someone just took this panel, cut out the characters, and did that, like the visual comic thing where they're just like slightly moving. So it's like, you can justify putting it into video, but it's still a comic book. It's like, I'm just watching one of those.
Yeah, it's just a really expensive one of those. I mean, yeah, that works for what it is, but it's definitely a voice, right? It is a voice, and he's good at it. Like, he's good at being him, and
very good at it. And I'm not necessarily like talking smack about him either, because
right, because that is good. Like, that is,
he can crush me with his wallet. So
this is also true. Could just suffocate you, just right underneath it. And that is that there is a beauty in an art form to that I have to respect. I think really, like, all of the issues are just writing issues at the end of the day. That can be had with him. I think give him a perfectly good 90-minute script. It'll be wonderful. What is Zack Snyder? A
90-minute script.
Give him 90-minute script with the same density of moments that he likes to have. He'll be fine.
Yeah.
But
and only one slow motion camera.
Yeah, I do feel like, even though I don't think about Zack Snyder that much nowadays, I haven't really engaged with his work in a long time, I do feel like he probably might have been one of those early influences. I don't know, that kind of shaped my taste that way, because I remember when I was younger, I saw 300 at a pretty early age.
Yeah.
I saw Watchmen at a pretty early age.
Yeah.
And
was that Snyder?
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Like I said, graphic novels and comics.
Yeah. Also Sucker Punch. That was pretty early on too.
That makes way too much sense.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Literally no story. It's just a series of moments, like
pure vibes,
roughly strung together.
Pure vibes, pure moments, pure art style, and just.
Hey, how do we fit a moment with a samurai, a Gatling gun, and a tank into the same film, into the same scene?
Easily.
How about dream sequence?
And
okay, so what's the film about? Dream sequences, multiple, plural.
Yeah, for sure. which is like very much his. It is really like Zack Snyder the movie, right? Is what Sucker Punch is. It's just pure, unadulterated, distilled style with zero substance, right?
Yeah.
It's a fascinating artifact.
To be fair, I loved it.
Yeah, it's a fascinating artifact for that reason. There's something very peculiar about it. I really don't know too many other films like, or I shouldn't say. I think there are a lot of films like, I think it's just very rare for them to be action movies, I think is what makes it peculiar, right? I think they're very much very pure style, no substance, like kind of films that exist like that. They're just all like art house dramas, I think, you know, most of them. I think it's very rare for it to be a VFX heavy action movie. I think that's what makes it very peculiar. I think there are definitely lots of, he's not the only director out there sniffing his own farts, you know, but it's just weird because he's an action nut at the same time. But that being said,
every other artist is just like, if you stop and think about it, it makes more sense. He's just like, turn your brain off. We're going on a ride.
Yeah, very much a roller coaster kind of director, which as far as roller coaster directors go, he might be one of the better ones, right? Like, I think that style is definitely preferable to like a Michael Bay, even though there's a lot to admire about that, the Bayhem style. I think there is.
I think it's because
I would still prefer Snyder style.
The Bayhem style is I would say it's watered down because of the fact that there is an attempt to add narrative. so you don't get the pureness of it.
Well, Zack Snyder's just there like a Superman figure standing over him, just like, your attempt at narrative is your weakness. That being said,
I genuinely think that's the case, because like if Michael Bay just stopped trying to write movies and just focused on creating the moments that he has, he would basically be on the level of like Zack Snyder in terms of bombastic roller coaster, just eyes bleeding, crazy VFX slow motion stuff.
Which, to be fair, I feel like the first Transformers movie kind of hits that vibe, and I think that's why that film is like Bayhem at its best, is because of the fact that like the whole last hour of that film, right, is like one long action sequence. You know what I mean? It kind of was like a pre-Avengers structure. Now that I think about it, you remember the structure of the first Avengers film? Battle of New York is like the whole last hour of the film. It's like I feel like it's very much an early attempt.
I'm trying to remember the Transformers
at that structure. The first Transformers movie was the same sort of way. In fact, it was very much the same kind of climax where the whole last hour of the film is just like one giant inner city battle, you know, with civilians all screaming all over the place. And it's very much a similar kind of structure. But yeah, I think that film is why that was kind of Bayhem at its best, because it's just like there are so many room for moments. And it was, you know, the narrative was only as strong as it needed to be to get you to that last prolonged battle sequence. And yeah, like that was all it needed to be to make it good Bayhem and to make it ultimately satisfying watch. Because it's like ultimately it delivers on the fantasy of why you came there, right? Which is to see Transformers represented in modern day with big action and big VFX and high quality big VFX. And it delivers on that fantasy, right? Like it gives you a whole last hour of the movie to just indulge that fantasy. And I think that's why a film like that ultimately works, even if Michael Bay, you know, is lacking as a director in a lot of ways, or just from an artistic perspective. I think that's what made that work, is because it really was a pretty pure distillation. That being said, yeah, I feel like that might have been what was really like a big early influence on me, were those kind of big directors, was like, you know, the Michael Bays and the Zack Snyders. I feel like being exposed to their movies pretty young might have been where a lot of that was coming from. But that being said, even though that's not really much my taste anymore, I think I've found my taste much more narratively. But I feel like that style, that substance still leaks through I feel like just with added substance, I should say, that style has leaked through still in a lot of my work of orchestrating moments. And I've just focused more on the writing aspect as well, but I still have a huge taste. Like, and I noticed that as a pattern in a lot of my work. I think that's really what it is. Man, we're just diagnosing my style here. Of being big on, and heavy on moments. Because when I look at something like, say, Beyond, right, that was a more recent machinima, and it helps that I just wrote that one. I didn't direct it, but even so, you can see in that one, right, it has the same sort of formula where there's lots of storytelling going on, but ultimately it climaxes in a huge moment, right? And the moment is highly stylized, highly intense, and very cinematic. And I feel like that is just kind of a trademark, I guess, of my style that really never truly goes away. I don't know. I guess that's just kind of how I am. But I think it's a part of my mission statement that I think I might have talked about with you. How do we usually put it? But basically, like, art and substance should never be at the expense of cool factor. I think is something, or maybe not should never be at the expense, but doesn't have to be at the expense, I should say. Yeah. I think is how we usually word it. Like, we've repeated that mantra a lot of times when we work on things together. And I feel like that's cool. Yeah, I feel like that's ultimately where we've landed, because so many filmmakers and so many artists in general place those two on opposite ends of a spectrum, and to get closer to one is to get farther away from the other, right? You could either have cool factor or you could have artistic substance. You can't have both, is the general dogma. And I strongly disagree. I feel like that was just, I feel like our personalities were just perfectly illustrated.
I strongly disagree. You're a coward. Well, here's what I would say, because I think as you grew,
I think that's the term I usually use, right? Like, artistic substance does not have to be at the expense of superficial coolness. Yeah. And I think you can have both.
Here's what I think happened as you developed your narrative.
Psychoanalyze me, dude.
As you got further into like understanding your narrative style and your preference for the stories you like to tell, the focus shifted from using story as a vehicle to deliver moments. Because I think it reversed, right? Where you start with a moment and you say, how do I create a story that creates this moment? Now you start with a story, and then your peaks are, you turn those into moments. So it's like, okay, so like now that this is where a peak in the story is occurring, how can I turn this up to 11? How can I just crank the volume on that and just make it big and make it deliver on that, that cool factor, right? So it's like, just adding in a couple of extra little bits of flair now turns that very justified event into a moment, because your story is already there. Your story is happening and you've already done all the work to justify this moment. But now, instead of having the story be secondary to that, the moment justifies the story, or justified by the story.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's not a bad analysis. I think it did very much happen that way, because come to think of it, like that is generally my process now. Is I do start with story. I start with themes. I start with very narrative heady stuff. And
it's just like, how can we turn this?
Yeah.
This
and then when I structure my story, I structure it in order to service those themes, service that story. And the thing is, I guess I've learned that I don't have to try to make moments. And I think that's the biggest difference. Yeah. Is that before, like, I would start with the moments and those would be my everything. I would put the work into making those moments happen. Whereas now it's like, I realized I have such a taste for big moments that I realize that because that is so ingrained in me, I don't have to try to make those happen. What I need to put my work into is the storytelling. Because the moments will make themselves, I've noticed. Like, if you have a strong enough story, moments will emerge from that. If you're telling
your story competently enough, all you have to do is just find where those, like I said, like where those peaks are in your story. Because a story will have peaks and valleys. Yeah. So you just all you have to do is get good at recognizing where those are, and then just making those peaks higher.
Yeah. And then just like, what are those peaks? Yeah, those are your moments. They naturally emerge from the story instead of the other way around, structuring your story around the moment. I like that. Thank you for psychoanalyzing me.
Been a pleasure. Although speaking of, I keep thinking about this. Speaking of old machinimas, do you remember that? I think it was called the Breakout, or like the Breakout machinima that we originally made as like a hyper convoluted intro to one of your like weekly update videos.
Yeah. Well, I used to do this thing on my old channel. For those who don't know what we're talking about, on my old channel, my old gaming channel, I did a thing where I would do weekly updates, but like every weekly update had a like narrative machinima introduction. And I don't know why I did that, but I did. So yeah, that was one of those machinimas that you and I collaborated on as one of those weekly update machinimas. And then I think on I pulled up the files for that at some point, and we re-uploaded it to the P-Cube channel, actually. So P3 Collective, the channel has that video on there as a standalone. Yeah, that machinima. I think it's just called the Breakout, because that was honestly probably the strongest one of those we made. And it just worked as like a tiny standalone thing. And so when I found the file for that, I was like, oh yeah, I remember this thing. Hey, this is actually pretty good. Let's re-upload it to P-Cube. And we did it, cut it up so that, it basically watches like a film, and then it just kind of went from there.
Because I think that was one of the first, that might have been the first thing that I directed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you basically directed that one. Yeah,
because I remember that was before we did all of like the because you were doing machinimas, and you were we had just started like experimenting with doing weird stuff in the Halo Forge system, and I was just like I was just going ham with that. Like I was like making structure, like sculptures in the Forge editor. I was just doing some random crazy stuff with it. But I think that was the first actual narratively focused cinematic thing that I ever directed. Now that I think about it, because that was before any of our live action stuff. That was before. Yeah,
it was.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if I did. I don't know if I worked on any of the machinima stuff with you outside of that. I mean, like maybe.
Yeah, I don't think you did.
Just to help.
Yeah, I think
just to help.
You were body acting, I think, at times for sure.
Mostly, yeah.
But like, that was back in you remember the days of body actors. But it's how times.
I miss those days, man.
They were fun, just hangouts. That was the thing about them, though. But now we can be a lot more.
You've been replaced by a bot.
Yeah, basically. So. But yeah, they were fun days. But yeah, I think that was the only machinima you worked with me on. But anyway, yeah, I think that was the only machinima you actually like worked on in a creative capacity. Of mine back then. Yeah, interesting days. I
can look back at that and add it to my IMDb. What's it called? The trivia section.
Started out in machinimas. It's going to be a trivia for both of us, to be sure. And a badge I'll wear proudly at that, because I think more young filmmakers need to realize how many viable options they have for creative expression nowadays. And any practice is good practice, and all of it is meritorious if you put your heart into it. So.
Okay, so this reminds me of something Adam Savage would say on Mythbusters. I don't remember exactly what the quote is, but something along the lines of just like, if you write down what happened, that makes it science.
Yes, very much so.
And it's like, I feel like that's just the kind of young creatives need to realize that this like really silly, maybe like hobby stuff that they're doing to just kind of like get ideas out of their head into like the real space, like through memes, through like little. Okay, I'm just gonna say posts because I'm trying to figure out a way not to say posts. Like really like dumb stuff like that, where like the only thing that's stopping you from turning that into a career is learning from it. Like if you can take that experience of creating something just because it's in your head, the only thing that's stopping you from turning that into something that like a skill is learning and analyzing what worked, what didn't work. Like, did the thing that you create get close to the thing that was in your head? If not, how do you fix that? If so, how do you turn that into like you said before, how do you turn that into a process? And then suddenly you're learning, suddenly you're making with intention. And then once you start doing that, it doesn't matter what you're making. You have learned to make.
Yeah, well said. And that is very true. There are a lot of things that can be of merit that you wouldn't think of that way.
Yeah.
And everything, like creating, is valuable. It is something that adds value to the human experience and to yourself and to others around you. And any way that somebody creates, with an intentionality, can be something that can be good, even if it doesn't feel like much. Like what you're doing has value. And I just feel like more people need to hear that, because oftentimes they won't hear it in, their personal lives.
Especially in like artistic institutions who are kind of pretty gatekeepy about what constitutes art and what doesn't.
Mm-hmm. This is very true. I mean, I think it goes both ways too, right? Like, I think there's opposite extremes, because I think if you go into the super artsy world, yeah, you have that issue where you have the gatekeepers who have a narrow view of what constitutes true art.
Yeah.
And
heavy air quotes.
Yeah. And then you go in the opposite direction. I know a lot of people who struggle with, perhaps they're in a culture or in a family or in a situation that doesn't value art or artists very much at all, right? And who just think that what you're doing is a complete waste of time. Either side will look at you sometimes and think what you're doing is a complete waste of time. And I think that's why it's important to have that affirmation of being like, no, keep doing what you're doing. If you love what you create, then somebody else can probably love it too. And so there's a value to that. So keep going and keep creating what you want to make, because if you want to make it, then you're going to care about it. And if you're going to care about it, then you're going to take the effort to do it right. And that's when good art is truly made.
And also just like finish your projects.
Yes. Also finish your projects.
Please finish your projects.
This is true.
If you are listening to this, and you are in the middle of a project now, finish that one before you do the next one.
Yes. Learn from our mistakes. No, starting
currently in the middle of like 5 projects.
Oh yeah. Speaking of which, let's do a general update about things, because this is quite possibly, I think it's fair to say, this is the first episode of season 3 of Hypercube podcast.
Yes.
So
why not?
Yeah, why not? For reference, we just started recording this very spontaneously. So we tend to have...
I just got off work. It's 1:00 in the morning for me.
I just woke up right before we started recording. And so we're both a little out of sorts. But time zones, how do they work? Yeah, this was a very spontaneous recording, but I think it was quite a successful one. So it's fair to say that this is the first episode of season 3 of the Hypercube podcast, our first time acknowledging it. Mm-hmm. Probably not. I'll record an intro for this afterwards, but don't tell the audience that. Oh, wait. So...
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
So that being the case, general updates. Welcome to season 3 of the Hypercube podcast. It's exciting to be potting again. Life has changed.
Is that what it's done?
Yeah, potting. It's a verb. You never hear anybody talk about potting? It's a podcast culture thing. You wouldn't know about it.
I don't live in LA anymore.
What?
I don't live in LA anymore.
This is true. You never did.
Nope.
All right, brilliant. Life has changed quite significantly since last we recorded. So, because I think the last season we left off on a bit of a kind of forward-looking note. And we're now on the other side, I think, of all of that jazz. So it's been crazy. I got married. You came back to the States to watch me get married and do many other things, but you primarily watched. No, I'm kidding. No, Loryn
I signed your document.
You did. Loryn.
I verified your marriage.
Signed our marriage certificate. Loryn and Rose, who's also here on PCube,
co-witnesses.
Were the signees, as the witnesses on our marriage certificate. By complete coincidence, you just happened to be standing there when we were signing it, and the officiant
I literally
was like,
walked up to ask you a question.
Yeah, and the officiant was just like, you two there, sign this document. We need witnesses. And so by complete happenstance, my two closest friends are the witnesses on my marriage license forever. And so, but it was beautiful. It was amazing. It was incredible. We might talk about it more later, but just want to say
we played D&D.
We did play a lot of D&D at the wedding. It was amazing, but it was really, it was a really incredible time. And I just wanted to acknowledge that on the record, being the next episode in the sequence, coming off of an episode where we were just talking about that and looking ahead to that. It really was a pretty extraordinary day, and how I'm really grateful to have done it and to have all that work be behind us, but also to now be living the married life with somebody that I very much love. So Haley and I are married now. You and Rose got to come hang out in America for a bit. That was really awesome to see you both. And yeah, we're both just in completely different places now. You're like pretty much officially an Australian resident.
Yeah. As of a few months ago, I am now waiting for my permanent residency visa to be approved, which every time we look at the website gets longer and longer and longer for the approval times. So it's upwards of I think 3 years now for
oh my goodness.
For 50%, because the way they have it is 50% of applications get approved by this time, and then 90% get approved by this time. So now it's 3 years and 5 years.
Well,
yeah.
At least you get to live there while you wait.
Yeah.
So
I'm not a trainee.
Yeah.
Living the Aussie life.
You're living and working in Australia. You're an entirely different person now. And because that's how it works. And yeah, I'm living and working in Oklahoma. I'm an Okie, which I never thought would be a thing. And
an Okie and an Aussie?
An Okie and an Aussie? What happened to us?
What are we doing?
We're here. But things have been crazy these last 7 months since the last podcast episode. And it's really been an extraordinary ride. Obviously, life has been really up and down. If we haven't been creating a lot of content or very active on the social medias, it is probably because life has taken over. And that's okay sometimes, to go a little dark.
I'm broke.
And to step away. Yeah, I mean, everybody's a little broke right now, but you're more so than me.
I'm working on it. I'm still on my, I guess 7 month or whatever, how long it's been, update on my make $100,000 in a year goal.
Yeah. You just threw that out there in the last episode.
I'm starting. I decided to make it a fiscal year, and I decided to make it the Australian fiscal year. So it started last month.
That's cheating.
That is an update. that has been my update for making $100,000. Listen. I'm on track. I think I told you I did the math at one point. I'm on track to almost. I'm not quite making 100,000 in a year. Well, this is AUD gross. So before taxes.
Qualifying.
I'm on track to get very close. And then my work decided to not have any projects for me in my area for the next few months.
Oh boy. That's not good. Well, speaking of which,
I got a second job.
Yeah, it's a good thing for that. But speaking of which, the reason why we're able to record this right now is because both of us are not at work right now.
That's literally it.
Neither of us are at work right now because your the primary day job is just doesn't have projects in your area. Me, I suffered a injury at work a few weeks back. My left foot got crushed by a large carbon steel pipe fitting, and it is currently in a boot. And so it is literally broken. I had a fracture in my left foot. So I have, of course, not been able to go into work. So I've been at home for the past couple of weeks. It's actually been kind of nice in some ways. I mean, getting your foot broken is not nice in any way, shape, or form. It's a very unpleasant experience. Would not recommend it. But
But in more ways than one, you're having a break.
In more ways than one, yes, I am having a break. My foot had a big break, but it is kind of been nice after all the hustle and bustle of life lately to just stop and breathe for a moment and be able to work on creative projects, which I have not had a lot of time to do otherwise. it has been, that part has been nice, and that has been a blessing in many ways. Of course, I am eager to get healed up, and I am on the mend. I've been seeing all sorts of doctor's appointments, and we expect them to be able to clear me for light duty soon, to be able to go back to work and basically do a desk job instead. Besides all that,
it just
nice
need to survive the walk to your desk.
Basically, yeah. Besides all that, it has been nice to actually be able to dedicate some time to just be at my desk and create. I just hate that I'm forced to, because I can't get around too much. But I've been walking on crutches for a bit. It's been very difficult. Bless my wife's heart. She's doing a phenomenal job. I can't thank her enough, taking care of a lot of things around the home when I'm not able. And it's been an adventure, to be sure. But that has, again, enabled me to create more. We've done a little bit of live streaming. We might do some more before I go back to work. I started playing Undertale with Haley, and it's just, it's been...
How's that going, by the way?
It's going all right. I was very sad. I did not like the way it went because I accidentally killed the character.
Did you get to the end?
That I didn't want to kill. No, I just finished the opening sequence. That's how far we got. But I killed the character I didn't want to kill, and it made me very sad. And I wanted to stop playing the game, so we stopped playing the game. And now I'm like traumatized to go back to it. But from what I understand, this is the standard Undertale experience. But it made me very sad.
Raph, the only way you can win is to never play the game.
Is this true? I understand there's a way to do a pacifist run, but I failed already.
There is a way.
Unintentionally.
There is a way.
Unintentionally, I have failed. But these monsters are very sweet. I don't want to hurt them.
That's too bad.
They all they're just troubled. That's all. They need direction.
Raph, they're monsters. They need to be slaughtered.
No. I don't want to. They're so adorable, and they're just, again, they just need direction in life. They're really troubled. And it makes me very sad because I didn't kill anything except for like the one that I most wanted to spare. And that makes me upset. But alas, apparently this is the standard Undertale experience. So either way, it's a traumatizing game. Don't play it.
Once you beat the game, I'm going to send you a video. I think it's like an 1.5 hour long video called What the Internet Did to Undertale.
What does that mean?
It's a fantastic deep dive into the fandom and just like community around Undertale. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Oh man. But yeah, so ups and downs in life in general. I don't like having a broken foot, but I do love having lots of time to create. And the pain hasn't been too bad lately though. So I am on the mend. Seeing lots of doctors.
It's time to start doing your physio. Start doing your isometric exercises.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. My left leg is so skinny now. It's terrifying. Yeah. It's horrifying.
Time for leg day. Just your left leg.
This is going to be so much leg day. Is this what it's like to have an injury? You've had more injuries than me.
I don't know. I think when I was young, that was the thing, is you just get like lazy.
I'm not lazy. I've been working this whole time.
Not lazy, but like something happens, you're just like, oh, I'm down now, and you just go, bah.
Yeah, you just gotta use it.
But now I'm like, I freaking dislocated my knee, and I was still walking around and trying to jump off stuff.
Wait, what?
I mean, I was down for a lot more than I should have been, but like, I was still stretching.
What is wrong with you?
I can't not.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm not doing too bad. I'm doing a lot of rest, a lot of recovery, but I'm exercising my brain with projects. And there's been a lot of progress on a lot of things because of that. Of course, I've actually been doing a lot of reading too. That's been awesome. Started watching things again. Have been able to do a lot of work on my book. For those who don't know, I have written a novel. It is written. It is written. It is complete.
Manuscript is finished.
I have a manuscript. I've been pursuing publishing for it. It's kind of up in the air whether I have been pursuing traditional publishing route for it, but I'm increasingly leaning towards self-publishing just because of what my intentions with the story are. So who knows? That might be something you see in the near future. I'm just going to plant seeds for that right here.
In the near future, which could be like anywhere in 10 or 15 years.
No, hopefully not that long, because I want to start writing a sequel. But
you can start writing the sequel.
This is true. But that being the case, it's Yeah, I mean, it might be 1 or 2 years, maybe yet still, because I would have to save up if I go for self-publishing to get some editing done on it, to get some more feedback on it, especially from you, and to go through all of that process, designing the cover art and stuff. And there's a lot more work you needed to do on your own for self-publishing, but it is still a very viable option where, depending on what your intentions with the story are, which from what I understand, my sort of intentions are very much conducive to why authors self-publish. So that's why I'm kind of leaning in that direction. A lot of progress on Edith Season 2. Thankfully, that's been back in shooting and is back in production, and it is looking awesome. Every time I shoot a new scene for it, I'm really excited to see how this season turns out. It'll probably... kind of throwing this out there, we kind of have discussed this might be like in the finale, I think, to my machinima career. I really don't foresee myself making a lot more machinimas after this, but I do want it to go out with a bang. I think, although we have discussed the possibility of an Edith Season 3, I don't want to rule that out if Season 2 is a huge success, and we do have ideas for what that storyline would be. That being the case, I probably wouldn't direct it if we did such a thing. I really don't think I've got another machinima, just in me. It's just not in my bones anymore. There are a lot of other things that I want to put my directing efforts into, but writing a season 3, I would 100% be down for if the second season warrants that in terms of the response we get. But that being said, second season is steadily moving in production. We are probably going to pursue a more fluid release schedule for that, unlike the first season where we released it on a weekly basis. I think second season will be a lot looser. We'll release episodes as they become ready, in the same vein of a lot of other web series that kind of do similar sorts of things. But I'm really excited. It's
easier for us with our schedules at the moment.
Yes. Yeah. Life is
like we just cannot commit to a set schedule.
For sure. Life is just way too crazy for us to be able to make any promises like that anymore. And I think, honestly, we've that ship has sailed, for a little bit now. So, but that being said,
I also just don't believe in set schedules, but that's the whole thing.
I do. I believe very strongly in set schedules. You need a schedule.
No, yes. Absolutely. It's when it's finished.
Sure. But that being the case, hopefully that can afford us the flexibility to make it as good as it can possibly be. Because if it's going to be my last foray into directing machinimas, it's got to be a doozy. So very excited about what's cooking for that. But progress is slowly but steadily moving. So we haven't forgot about it in season 2. It is still a thing. Hopefully we'll have more to show you all next year. Anything else we need to go over?
Not sure.
Perfect.
There's so much happening.
There's so much happening that
like I'm still trying to figure out what all my obligations are.
Fair.
I'm catching up on all my obligations still.
Fair.
But I was gonna say, you remember how you were saying it's like, oh yeah, like we don't have too much work, so we can do this episode. My work actually pulled me into overtime. Tomorrow, so I need to get up in like 7 hours.
Oh shoot! All right, we better call this a wrap. Thank you very much for listening. This episode was edited and mixed by Raphael Pacheco with original theme music by Mono Memory. Until next time, we'll see y'all later. God bless.